Welcome to Mooney Reads. Today I wanted to talk about my book blanket. In 2023, I decided to record what I was reading via a blanket, kind of like a temperature blanket. So I'm going to go through what I did for this book blanket and show how it looks. Then I'm going to talk about how I would have done things a little bit differently. And I'm then going to talk about the project for 2025's reading that I'm going to be doing. In terms of supplies and things that I used, I used the Big Twist yarn, the Living collection, although I incorporated, I think, some of the value stuff as well because some of the colors were similar. And I did 2 yarn strands because I wanted to be able to show more than one thing about each book because a lot of them could be categorized more than one way. And this is a 4 weight, so typically you'd use like a 4.5 millimeter or something in that neighborhood, but I used an 8. And I don't know the brand of this crochet hook, but I really like it. It comes with I want to say a slightly bigger one that you can change out. I got it for Christmas from one of my coworkers in 2022. And I limited the number of colors that I could choose from, kind of based around the yarn collection. Big Twist is Joann's like brand of yarn. And I know not everybody loves it, but it's value yarn. I didn't want to spend $100 trying to make this. I don't know how much I spent, and I would rather not know, but I like this better than the typical value brand that you find a lot of places. I can't think of the name right now, but I find that a lot of their stuff is too rough, and if it's too rough, it hurts. It hurts my hands to crochet with that, but I find that this is softer. Now, in terms of the colors, I don't have the key in front of me because it's on my phone, but I will put the full key of how I ended up doing it in the description in case you want to use it or tweak it or whatever, or just to know. But I did, each color is a different genre or category of books, because things like young adult or graphic novels, not strictly a genre, but it is a significant part of the book that I would want represented. And then depending on the format of the book, I did a different stitch, and depending on how long the book was the number of rows that I used. For instance, the first book that I read that year was Caroline's Heart by S.A. Chant, which is a romance novella that's set, I think, in the 1800s. The main character is a cowboy. There's T for T romance and a lot of discussion on grieving. Very good. Definitely recommend it. But I read that on my e-reader, and then I did this as a half double crochet because it was an ebook. Audiobooks I did single crochet, and physical books were double crochet. Now, the thing with this, I didn't have, I think, too terribly much experience crocheting, especially not larger projects, and I'm pretty bad with numbers. So I didn't think about that amount that I read, the fact that I would be doing a row for each 100-ish pages, but I didn't think about the fact that this blanket would be huge. I'll put a picture of it laid out maybe on my bed or something to kind of give you a full idea. For context, I'm 5'5". And this is how far up I have to go to where it's like barely touching the top of my foot. So it's probably like 6 feet tall, maybe. It's massive, and that's just my reading through October. So the last 2 months of the year are not actually represented on this blanket because I thought it was getting too big. I actually still have a lot of leftover yarn, which is why, or one of the reasons why I want to do something this year too. So I guess that starts off the stuff that I would change if I were to do this project again. Like I said, I'm happy with how the blanket turned out. So I wouldn't change this one, but going forward, I would pick a different format. Because I read too many books to be able to realistically do this. That might look like doing a quarterly reading blanket rather than a yearly blanket, or maybe not going by page count. That would have helped me a lot. And I also think that doing it in this format would also not work for people who read a lot fewer. Something that I've seen with people who read fewer, or just in general a different approach to book blankets, is using a granny square. And you could probably color code it similarly around genre, maybe have a different color for genre and a different style of granny square for maybe if it's a young adult or adult book or something like that. I've also seen people match the granny squares to like the aesthetic of the book cover, which is cool too. So there are a lot of options in this regard, and that's really the main thing I would have changed, because the blanket ended up being kind of huge. Probably also would have made it like smaller width-wise. I hadn't really done a lot of big projects, and this guy's a little huge. Very comfy. It's kitten approved. But it's pretty big. Another thing I probably would have changed is the yarn. I liked crocheting with this yarn. Like I said, it's soft, which is a big thing, but I did not really think about the washing instructions. I don't know if I didn't think about them at all, like didn't read them, or if I thought air drying a blanket would be fine. But air drying a blanket this big and this thick, like I said, it's 2 strands of yarn big. It's a pain. So I would recommend looking at the washing instructions and finding one that's dryer safe. Baby yarn, I found, is pretty safe in terms of how you can wash it, because if you're making a baby blanket, it's going to get horrendously dirty, and no one wants to air dry that. So especially if you like pastels, that's a really good option. Really, I think those are the only things I would have changed, or that I would do differently, kind of if I were to do a full blanket like this moving forward. And I think those are some things that you should think about if you're planning to do something like a reading blanket. So this was 2023's reading blanket, and I didn't do one in 2024. I was kind of finishing up 2023's, deciding what I should do about it, because I got to October and it was, you know, unruly. So I just didn't do anything for 24. But for 25, I have started a project, and I saw somebody else do this, which, I mean, I feel like that's the majority of a lot of people's crochet projects. I also saw, I think, someone do a book blanket before too, or at the very least saw them do the temperature blanket. But I saw someone doing a snake, like a little stuffy that looks like a snake that's patterned based off of their reading. And I thought that looked like a lot of fun. I thought that it was also a lot more manageable than a blanket, because if I have a really long snake stuffy, you know, that's cool. Whereas a blanket, you know, there are limits. There are limits to a snake stuffy too, but I feel like it's different. I'm also using a lot less yarn because he's not going to be huge. This is the head. This is what I've gotten so far. With this new project, I have decided to color code stuff a little bit differently and use the stitches differently. And I'll also include this key in the description if you're interested. So with the blanket, I did 2 different colors so that I could represent more than one genre. I'm foregoing that this time. I'm also doing away with format. That's not one of the things I'm recording with this particular project. Instead, I've changed up the color, like what goes with what. I'm keeping it similar in that the reds are going to be more nonfiction and the blues are going to be more fiction. However, YA, middle grade, and graphic novels are not going to have their own colors. Instead, I'm going to do some different things with the stitches. And this is subject to change because I haven't actually tried some of these stitches, and I need to be sure that they would kind of work okay in a stuffed animal. So it's a work in progress, but tentatively, I'm going to do different stitches for young adult, kids, and middle grade books. I am including kids books this time, just because, I mean, I kind of read fewer kids books than I did in 2023. And then when I get to graphic novels, I'm actually going to be using a color, and I'm going to surface stitch around it. I don't know if I want to do it in the beginning or at the end or both. We'll see what ends up looking good. But I'm going to have most of my adult books are just going to be a standard single stitch. I do still plan to do a row per 100 pages, more or less. If it's 0 to 100 pages, it's got 1 row. If it's 101 to 200, it gets 2 rows, etc. And so far, I don't have any books recorded in it yet because this is just the head. I'm going to put little buttons as eyes, and I'm deciding whether or not to give it a tongue. I would recommend maybe finding a pattern for the head. I just kind of like free made this one, so I don't have any recommendations as far as that goes. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot more quick than this, so I don't think that I'm going to be trying to finish up October of 2025 and January and February of 2026. So that's good. I actually did this between like the last couple hours I was up last night and maybe like a little bit this morning. It didn't take me very long, even with some backtracking because I freehanding it, which is you know, potentially a questionable decision, but it ended up working out fine, I think. So now I'm going to walk through the colors that I have, what's going with which genre, and I'll show you what the color actually looks like. I might talk a little bit about why I chose to take it off or move it or whatever, so we'll be kind of maybe comparing a little bit with last year's. So first I have the white, which was originally Memoir in my 2023 blanket. But this year I decided to move it instead of a nonfiction. It was going to be with the fiction because I thought the white went with the blue better and just because of where I needed a color for. So this is going to be like just contemporary fiction. Anything that doesn't have like a fantasy or horror or romance aspect to it is going to be white. I think another reason was because just I have so much of it, so part of my choices had to do with how much I think I'm going to read of what and how much yarn I have, because I don't particularly want to buy more if I can help it. The gray I have for horror and thriller if I end up reading it. I think last year I did this as the general fiction color. And I decided to do white rather than the gray for general fiction just because white seems more generic than gray, I guess. Plus gray is a little darker for horror, so that just made sense to me. I have 3 different iterations of blue. I have one that's darker, one that's lighter, and one that's more teal. The like darker regular blue is fantasy. The teal is sci-fi because I thought that was, I don't know, this just makes sense to me to be sci-fi and they're similar. And then the white, or not white, the light blue one is going to be romance since it's not as close to the other two, plus it's lighter, so it makes sense as romance to me. And then I have yellow, which does not fit in with red or blue. So it's going to be poetry. And I know that you can have like novels in verse. I'll deal with that when I get to it, but in general for the moment, yellow is poetry. After that, we go into nonfiction. Red is going to be more history, sociology, politics, that sort of thing. That's probably what I read the most in terms of nonfiction. And that is the same as what is in the blanket. And I think there's quite a bit of red going on in it. So, and this is another one that I have 2 of, so it made sense to continue to have it as that. Brown, for the last blanket, I think was poetry, because it's also, could be considered an in-between, but to me, kind of like white makes more sense with blue, brown makes more sense with red, and I'm going to be using it for self-help, spirituality, that sort of thing. After that, I have a maroon, which you can see is different from the red. And this one is going to be for articles. I've arranged some articles that I want to read alongside books as a part of this DIY classes thing that I put together last year that I didn't complete, but still have a video on. I plan to continue that this year, but like on a slower, more like lax sort of pace, but I still want to read the articles and to show those. I still have to decide how I want to do it, because if it's like a 5-page article, that's kind of a lot to do a whole thing for it. So I think I want to decide if I want to do it by like clusters of like 5 finished articles or like 50 pages of articles. We'll see. And then we have green, which from like a color perspective maybe makes more sense to put with blue than red, since there's blue in it but not in red. But I wanted to use green for my nature books. One of the things that I would like to get into more is the books on nature and prehistory, like dinosaurs and stuff. And I just thought the green one made sense for that, and that was cute. So that might be a big reason why I switched it and took the white out of nonfiction, because I wanted green for nature. And then I have pink, this pink peachy color, which is for memoirs and any other nonfiction that doesn't fit those things. Last year, I forget what green was for. Maybe middle grade. And pink, I really don't know, because I only have 1 line of pink in this whole blanket. So I was trying to figure it out, and kind of remember. So who knows? Finally, you can see that the head is purple. This purple color. This is kind of just the general color that I'm gonna have. It's what the head and tail are going to be, because it's, first of all, red and blue together, which are the 2 like kind of main color schemes we're going with, and I just liked it. Green was too predictable. And then I have this other purple, which is slightly different, but this is going to be what indicates a graphic novel or manga. And I'm not going to, like, I'm going to make the actual snake with whatever color it is. So if it's a a fantasy graphic novel, I'm going to do it in that dark blue color, and then I will surface crochet on top of it. And I'm not sure yet if I'm gonna do like maybe like just a line over like where it starts and where it ends, or if I want to do like a zigzag pattern or something cute. I'll just see what the vibes are whenever I read a graphic novel, and we'll see how it goes. So that is it for my book recording crochet projects, book tracker crochet projects. I will definitely be checking in about the snake guy. I like the idea of including it in with my wrap-ups and kind of talking about where I'm at, and also like how I've adjusted it. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have done any crafting projects like this that line up with your reading, because I would really like to know. I've seen some pretty cute stuff. I know I've seen Kathy, who is on YouTube, but I've seen her post a fair amount on Instagram about her book one that she cross-stitched, and I did consider doing one of those because I've been getting into cross-stitching, but then I saw the snake thing and I wanted a cool big snake stuffy. But yeah, if you've done anything like this or thinking about doing a tracker, if it's crafty, let me know about it in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.